Berlusconi and Putin, who damage or destroy democracy and use masculinity as a tool of political legitimacy. In America, Turkey, Brazil, and other geopolitically important nations, such rulers have exploited their country's resources to satisfy their greed and obstructed efforts to combat climate change. Their dependence on corruption and censorship and their neglect of the public good mean that they handle national crises badly and often bring ruin upon their people. How to combat this authoritarian ascendance is one of the most pressing matters of our time. The initial responses of illiberal heads of state to the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic are a case in point. All crises are leadership tests that clarify the core values, character, and governing style of rulers and their allies. Yet a public health emergency exposes with particular efficiency the costs of a perennial feature of autocratic rule, the repudiation of norms of transparency and accountability. The coronavirus outbreak started in Xi Jinping's China, a country of entrenched one-party rule. Wuhan Dr. Li Wenliang warned his peers in December 2019 about the virus's destructive potential. The Chinese police silenced him, classifying his truth-telling as illegal behavior since it conflicted with government assertions that the disease was preventable and controllable. In Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orban used the pandemic to complete his process of autocratic capture. He declared a state of emergency and then instituted rule by decree to give himself dictatorial powers. In Brazil, where democracy is under assault, President Jair Bolsonaro claimed that COVID-19 was no worse than the flu and fired his health minister, Luiz Henrique Mandetta, for advising the public to practice social distancing. In each case, the leader's priority was not to save lives, but to maintain or expand his power. With climate change likely to cause increased levels of disease and scarcity, the spread of the strongman style of rule doesn't just endanger democracy, but also poses an existential threat. No historian can get inside the heads of the dead, but with sufficient documentation, we can detect patterns of thought and action, writes Robert Darnton. This book aims to do just that, by looking at the evolution of authoritarianism, defined as a political system in which executive power is asserted at the expense of the legislative and judicial branches of government. I focus on Benito Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, Francisco Franco Bahamonde, Muammar Gaddafi, Augusto Pinochet Ugarte, Mobutu Sese Seko, Silvio Berlusconi, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump, with Idi Amin, Mohamed Siad Barre, Jair Bolsonaro, Rodrigo Duterte, Narendra Modi, Viktor Orban, and others making cameo appearances. To illuminate the entire arc of authoritarian rule, starting with how democracies are degraded or destroyed, I do not include communist leaders like Xi, who take power in an already closed system. I do acknowledge the ways communist and other authoritarianisms developed through mutual influence. Zairian anti-communist president Mobutu learned from the personality cults of communist leaders like Nicolae Ceausescu of Romania and China's Mao Zedong. He took one of his titles, the helmsman, from the latter. Some listeners may wonder why I do not discuss strong female leaders in modern history, such as Britain's Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher or India's Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. While some of these women may have had certain strongman traits, Thatcher's nickname was the Iron Lady, or engaged in repressive actions against minority populations, none of them sought to destroy democracy, and so they are not addressed here. Many studies point to recent historical events to explain today's turn away from democracy, like the 2008 recession and increases in global migration that heightened racist sentiments. Other works go back to the collapse of communism in 1989 to 1990. Unleashing nationalist and tribalist sentiments in Eastern Europe, it encouraged the resurgence of the far right in Western Europe as well. Putin, the former communist functionary who is now a leader of the global right, successfully rode that tide of political upheaval and ideological transformation.